All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of Into the Lion's Den with your new co-host here for the week or for a couple weeks. We're going to run a series with Dan, the man, Clark Kent. I don't know which other ones I want to give him.
I don't know if I'd go
Clark.
that far.
He's got the glasses. He's got the fresh cut all the time, and he definitely performs like Superman on the sales field. So welcome to the show, Dan. This episode, as always, is brought to you proudly by Level Creative Studios and Pride Roofing and Construction.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely excited to be here. Definitely excited to be on the podcast. So let's jump into it.
Yeah. So, some of you guys that are regular watchers, you've seen Dan on here before. We talked a little bit about sales, but that one was a little bit more just a couple of bros talking about our lives. This time we're going to dive really into sales. What is sales? Let's talk about our journey in sales, our growth, stuff like that. We got a pretty good script here that we're going to run off
absolutely.
of. But Dan, you're going to be the focal point today. And well, do you want to introduce yourself first? Let's introduce you a little bit first, and then we'll do that.
A lot of you guys have seen me with deep dives with Dan. I still get a lot of crap for that from a lot of my friends and family. But it's just fun to be out in the field, kind of fun to show you guys what we do on a daily basis. So to be inside the podcast room, do something a little bit different, I'm definitely excited for. So
Cool.
Let's talk about my favorite topic is
Sales, baby, sales.
selling stuff. Just
All
love
right.
it.
Keeps the world going round.
It does.
Hey, all right, so let's talk about your start.
Yeah.
Where'd it come from? Why'd you get into sales? All
Well,
that good stuff.
I was thinking about this actually this morning, ironically, is I was trying to think back of what the furthest point was that I realized I wanted to be into sales. And it goes back to sixth grade. In sixth grade, do you remember Pixy Stix?
Yeah.
So in sixth grades, we grew up in my household. I'm one of five, single mom, grew up pretty poor. So we didn't have a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody at school had Pixy Stix. I'm like, I want some Pixy Stix. So I was like, we can't afford to go get Pixy Stix. I was like, how can I make my own Pixy Stix?
Yeah.
So I remember you remember the Kool-Aid packets?
Uh-huh.
And they were like 20 cents or 8 cents, whatever it was. So I'd take Kool-Aid packets, mix it with sugar,
Mm-hmm.
put them in baggies, and then I would sell them at school. So, and I remember I did that.
Bringing this foreign substance in a bag into school.
And
Savage.
I think about it now, I'm like, one, I'm surprised they didn't call the cops
Mm-hmm.
thinking that we have foreign substances in school. But two, I'm like, how did I not get in trouble for this? And I did that. Me and one of my good buddies, his name was John Miller Jackson. Me and him sold for 2 years these Pixy Stick likes. And I just remember we'd go to Save-A-Lots, get baggies, buy sugar, take all of our proceeds and apply it towards our next re-up, if you would call it. And then
How much money you make?
I don't remember. All I remember is we sold them for $1 a bag.
Yeah.
And we didn't fill them all the way up, but I mean,
what do you think the cost was to put that bag together? Obviously,
it
you probably weren't tracking all
it
your
was
expenses.
If I had to guess, it was cheap. It was probably, I don't know, less than 30 cents
Yeah.
to put it all together by the time we were all said and done.
All
So
right, 70% profit.
yeah, definitely
My
good
man.
markup.
My man, all right.
Yeah.
Well,
Try to do that nowadays. We're in big trouble.
Don't tell the IRS.
Right.
He still owes money.
Right.
Now, I have a similar story. It wasn't for sales. It was more an entrepreneurial idea that I had, which I definitely probably would get in trouble for if you could still get in trouble for it, but I was a pirate. So back when LimeWire was a
Ooh.
thing, I downloaded LimeWire, and I'd go around taking orders, essentially, of what songs you want or what genres do you
Yeah.
want and whatever. And I go home, download all the viruses onto my computer, get the LimeWire burn CD set up.
Stop the internet and phone lines.
I'd have occasionally, I'd doodle on the top of it so it'd look cool. So some, branding, I
Yeah.
guess. But I'd sell them for like $5 a pop.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I would have made big money then.
Yeah.
I remember doing the LimeWire CDs. You'd burn the CDs for your girlfriend at the time.
Oh yeah.
So whatever girl you
Your
like,
love mix, yeah.
you do 5 like love songs.
These songs remind me of
Yeah.
you.
I remember like Angel by Shaggy.
Yeah.
That was one of the like top songs that you would put on a CD.
My man, this guy's
Yeah.
been whispering sweet nothings
Right.
in the ladies' ears for forever. That's cool.
Yeah. Talked to my wife about that the other day. It's funny we brought up mixed CDs and she was the mix CD maker
Mm-hmm.
when she was in school. So it's like, that's funny because I was the mix CD maker for all my friends. So kind of,
Yeah.
except I wasn't smart enough to charge for them. I did it for free. So I really, I really
Come on, man. We
missed
don't
the
work for free
calling.
here. Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
I really missed the calling there.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you were 6 years old when you figured out that you were good at sales, or that you
No, in
liked it.
sixth grade.
Sixth
So that would have
grade,
been,
okay.
I don't know, what are you, like 10, 11 in sixth grade?
I guess you'd be around somewhere between 10 and 12.
Yeah, 10 and 12.
I think
Yeah,
11
so
is probably because I
somewhere
mean I'm just
between 10
thinking
and
based
12,
off of
yeah.
Adeline. Adeline's 12; she's in 7th grade,
Yeah.
so probably 11.
Yeah, probably 11. So 11, I figured that out. And then I go through school. I mean, it's lucky to make it out of school. It was just not for me. And I told myself, and it's funny because my grandma, she's like, whatever you do, you need to go to college. And she's like, I'll find a way to help you if you want to go to college. So make it through school, and I was like, nope, this isn't for me. It's like, I want nothing to do with school. So then I tell myself, I was like, all right, what am I going to do to be able to financially support myself for the rest of my life? So I started doing landscaping, like, oh man, this is going to be great. I was like, I can make a lot of money. I think minimum wage was like $5.25. You work 60 hours a week, make $500 if you're lucky. So I was like, this isn't working out. So I actually started working for a clothing company called Buckle. And
like nobody knows what the buckle is. Yeah.
Well, it went from like the brass buckle to buckle. So a lot of older people, they think of the brass buckle, but yeah, it's, I mean, I'm sure you've been in there. I'm sure a lot of people have.
And we weren't really on the high end of earnings when we were, and like my parents weren't, so we didn't shop there.
Well, we didn't shop there either. Yeah. I didn't even know what it was until so
I just wore hand me downs until I got my first job, and then I started buying Walmart clothes. So.
Right. there you go. So I had worked in the retail space in high school. I worked at Abercrombie and Fitch. Talk about like a cult. I mean, Abercrombie and Fitch is a cult. So I was like, I kind of like this. Well, I ran into somebody. I think I was buying a pair of jeans, and they recruit off the sales floor. That's like their big MO. And they're like, hey, you'll be great to work here. I was like, I don't know. Wasn't really loving doing landscaping. So I was like, yeah, I'll do this. And I was like, what do I have to do? And they're like, well, you have to sell. I was like, okay. I was like, I can do that. So going into selling jeans, you think you're like, hey, this should be super easy. There's probably not a lot of money in it. It is very super easy, but there is a ton of money in selling jeans. So I did very well when I started out selling jeans there for Buckle. And I think that really sparked my love for just selling in general. And then you just look at it as you're just building a relationship. So it's all relationship based. You have a lot of repeat customers, jeans wear out, so on and so forth. I was like, if I can figure out how to get this customer to come back, I don't have to work as hard to find somebody new. So I did that for a while, and then I got out of that. I actually met my wife there. She actually worked for me, so that was one of the driving factors.
Bud. All right.
One of the driving factors. If anybody that sees us now, they're probably like, I can't believe those two are still together, because it was kind of like this big thing. But so it was kind of the driving factor to leave, and then I started welding after that. Just total opposite. Just switched away from it. Wanted out of the retail space. Started welding for a couple years. It was going great. Company I worked for at the time, he was downsizing and he had to cut some overhead. So he's like, hey, will you take a layoff? It's like, yeah, I'll take a layoff. Well, the crappy part was when I decided to take that layoff, me and my now wife just moved into a duplex, and I just bought a brand new Harley. And I'm like, dude, I was like, what? I was like, I can take a couple months off, but I need to go back to work. So a good friend of ours, his dad owned a car dealership, and he's like, hey, you should come sell cars. And I was like, no, I don't want to come sell cars. Like, car salesmen are sleazy, want nothing to do with it. Well, 2 months of not working, you're like, okay, I need to go back to work.
I had to do something, yeah.
So I go to the car dealership, and I remember I started a couple days after my birthday, and I first got there, I was like, I don't really know. It's like, I don't like this, a little high pressured. And then something just clicked inside of me. Like a week after working there, I was like, hey, I'm going to give it my all and just really try to make this thing work. And ever since then, my love for sales has just grown and grown and grown. And when you find success and you find out what works, you tend to really love that even more. So like as soon as you see that instant success or like, hey, this is really working out well for me, it's like, hey, how can I do more? How can I grow this? How can I get better? And so it's just kind of flourished from there.
That's awesome. So maybe this is not on the script, but I want to know what's the biggest difference between car sales and roof sales?
So I'd say the biggest differences between the two is no matter what you're selling, sales is sales. You always have your core fundamentals of what you're selling. But car sales is very transactional, so it's very quick, and it's like, hey, you show up to buy a car. I'm working with you for a couple hours, and then I probably won't see you again until it's next time to buy your car, or I happen to see you when you get your oil change. Roofing sales, especially if we're dealing with the insurance process, is it could be a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, depending on the size of the scope. So I think a lot of people struggle with not having that like super transactional, super fast pace, and it's a little bit more kind of like cradle to the grave, drawn out.
Sure.
So I thought I was going to struggle with that when I came over into the roofing industry, but
What kind of adjustments did you have to make in order to really gain traction?
you look at this as just a long term. So if you come into this and you think, hey, I can work here for 6 months, or I can work here for 8 months or a year and get everything I'm putting into out of it, you can't. Right. So you have to really think of this as like a long-term game, a long-term play of, okay, I want to build relationships. And that's probably the number. And that's what I did really well when I sold cars, was building relationships to get that repeat and referral business. But it's even more crucial now to really focus on building that relationship to get repeat and referral business long term.
What was your expectation when you moved from cars to roofing? Like, I mean, what I mean by that is like, were you already fully committed, or was it more you were testing? And
I was kind of testing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a tried and true car guy, and we always said in the car business that it's kind of like the 1%. So if you are having that conversation with somebody, most likely that person that you're having that conversation with is also like the 1%. And I think that applies to a lot of businesses. No matter, it's just something inside of you. You can't teach it. You can't grow it. You can try to bring it out of somebody, but it's like either you have it or you don't. And when you connect with somebody that has it, you're like, okay, like this guy has that 1% of whatever this fugazi is that we're thinking about that it is, whether it's like, hey, this guy just shows up to work every day. This guy grinds it out. This guy's really good. Whatever that is, it's, I wish I could put my finger on it, on what that 1% truly means, but I just feel like it's something internal that you have that you're almost born with.
But yeah, I think a natural salesperson, I think you can acquire and earn and learn the skill of sales, but there are some people who will always excel, and it's innate inside of them. I think I saw the snippet from Les Brown, motivational speaker, where he's talking about his son, and long story short, his son won. He's telling a story about his son where they're playing Connect Four, and he beat his son like 10 times in a row and wanted to go to bed, but his son said, "We're not done until I win." Right? I think that's kind of that internal, like understood mantra inside of a salesperson is they're not done until they win, and that's one of the biggest. I think that's one of the reason that there's a lot of people who've tried their hand in sales, and who have completely fallen on their face and made it very short-lived, which is that they didn't go in, burning the boats for one thing, and they didn't have the mentality of I'm not done until I win, right? Because in sales you're never done winning, right? You never actually cross that finish line, but you're always thirsting for it.
It's the chase,
right? Some people are motivated by the chase, and some people are just not.
Do you think that's a generational thing that we deal with nowadays, or do you think it's just the nature of sales?
I don't know. I mean, I think that the younger generation is starting to understand the value of sales more than older generations did. I mean, and they look at sales differently as well. Like everything is broadcasted on the internet all the time about how to get yourself in a position where you're making 10 figures, and blah, 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 blah. And it always boils down to your ability to sell, whatever the product is, whatever. So I think the younger generation is starting to understand the value of communication. Older generations, there were a lot of people who did, but there's a lot of people who just focused on sweat equity, breaking your back, and keeping consistent to whatever it is. But I think that, but the problem is they understand, the younger generation understands, but they're not being, I don't feel like they're being nurtured into a position where they have enough wherewithal to make
Yeah.
it to the point where they're actually winning.
Well,
That was a professional way of saying they're pretty soft skinned and they
Yeah.
quit fast. So.
And that goes to, I had a good mentor of mine when I first got into the car business, and he said, remember this, you go through what you go through. And that didn't click for me for the longest time. And I never understood for like months and months and months. He would always say, hey, you go through what you go through. And I'm like, man, I was like, what the hell is this guy talking about? And then finally, one day it just clicked for me. I was like, okay, that kind of makes a little bit more sense to me. And the way that I interpret that is like, you're going to go through what you go through no matter what. So it's like, you could wake up, have a shitty day, and you're going to go through hell the rest of the day, or you go through 15 different people that are just pissed off, tell you no, but it's like, are you still continuing, kind of like you said, to stay with it, even through all the minutia and all the bullshit, and to get to the other side? Or do you take that no, or it gets super tough in the middle of it, and you're just like, nope, I'm done. See you later. So I think a lot of people probably feel that.
I get that. I get that statement pretty well. I think you got to roll with the punches, and a lot of times the failures, because the failures, the best salesman in the room generally has been told no more times than every other salesman in the room, right? Generally more times than everybody else. They get the most no's, and that's a hard concept for some people to grasp. So let's talk about the failure. What was the biggest, like, when you had your very first, like, big sale failure, and you worked really diligently for it, and then you lost it? How'd that go for you?
Well, I mean, like you said, you get told as a higher caliber salesperson, you probably get told no more often than somebody that is like a C player, just because you're, like I tell our guys all the time, it's about how many at bats you're at or how many shots you're going to take. So like, it's the infamous saying is, hey, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So it's like, people will see us and they'll be like, oh man, you guys are crushing it, but they don't realize for us to get there, maybe we got through 150 no's or 200 no's or whatever that is to finally get us there. They're just like, hey, that person's there.
Think about the major leagues, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're playing a professional sport, and the best hitters barely ever meet 25%. Right? They're barely on the bases 1 out of 4 times, right? So I mean, but that's just I think that's the nature of the beast with competitive-minded humans. Right.
And
it's
that's like anything.
and it's all about volume. What you were just saying, it's all about volume. It's like, yeah, I went through 150 no's, but I was willing to take those 150 no's because I know eventually somebody's going to say yes. You got that abundance inside of you. You get it, right?
So to go back to your point of just when I first got into the car business, I found success super early. I worked at a big dealership. We sold anywhere between 300 to 500 cars. But we had 50 sales guys. So you're like, hey man, like 300 cars is great. But I'm like, yeah, 300 cars, selling 300 cars a month is great, but you are competing with 50 other guys. Now, grant you, like I said, you kind of have that top 1%. And that's where it always says like, hey, all I need to do is get my piece of the pie. I don't care what anybody else is doing. I just want to focus on my piece of the pie. So that's what I did. I just focused on what I needed to get, and I naturally rose to the top. I'm just focusing on what I needed to do. So I want to say it was probably like month 8 in the first 8 months. I think I was the salesman of the month 6 out of the 8 months when I first started. And it was funny. I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, I wonder if I can find those sales awards. That'd be kind of cool to go back and look. But I had a deal where I was working, and I want to say, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but I think it was a 20-car deal with a commercial company, so a business owner. And we were there. Everything that he wanted, had everything down, pen to paper, already like counting my commission check. I'm like, this is going to be great. I'm having a great month. And he calls me up. He's like, hey, somebody else give me a better deal. And I was like, okay. I was like, whoa. I was like, time out. Let's go back to it. I was like, what am I going up against? And it's like, we've been working on this for a while. And mind you, as I'm working this 20-car deal, I average 30 cars a month. So I was like, hey, I'm not really focused on anything else. I was like, I got this. It's going to set my month. So I'm not really prospecting, not really focusing on anything else because I'm like, hey, I have this, I have this
you
sealed.
got white whaled, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So I have this sealed in the bag, and I'm like
Mhm.
talking crap to everybody, you know. And he calls me. He's like, hey, somebody else give me a better deal. I was like, all right, well, let's go back to the drawing board. He's like, no, I already signed the paperwork. I was like, fuck.
Savage.
I was like, dude, you gotta be kidding me. I was like, after all this work that I put in. So I remember it's towards the end of the month. So at that point, I mean, I didn't have much time to kind of make up ground for all that lost time spent on that deal. So I sulked for a day or two. We were open 7 days a week back in Ohio. So you can sell cars 7 days a week back in Ohio. And I remember I took 2 days and I was like, all right, I need to get back at it. So I could have taken the rest of the month and just felt bad for myself and said, hey, you know what? Like, I lost this big deal. Let me feel bad for myself. But guess what? Nobody else feels bad for you. It's like, suck it up. You move on. You take the L and you figure out how you can make it better. So that's what I did. I just had to tell myself, like, hey, even though I lost that and how bad that sucked, and I counted on that the whole month, is you just have to move on and figure out how you can make the best of the rest of your month, because on the first of every month, you're from hero to zero real quick. So
just took that quick shift and let
Yep.
the chip fall off your shoulder. What other adjustments did you make at that point?
I learned a big lesson there of just don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I mean, like you said, the white whale syndrome, you see like this big shiny object and you're like, hey, I'm going to go after this. And like you have tunnel vision and you don't really care what's going on outside of that. But it definitely taught me to just take everything with a grain of salt. Like, I don't take things personally anymore. And it's the same with the roofing industry is you have people that you think are going to go with us or they're going to go with you. And then they turn the corner and they're going with somebody else. You're like, like, we've been working together for 3 months. Like, what just happened?
You don't know the external forces.
Yeah.
Right. You don't know who they're connected to. You don't know what conversations they're having. You only have that time you have with that client. Right. Yeah. That's one thing that I've been very hesitant really with allowing. I don't know, allowing's probably not the right word, but opening up new opportunities for commercial business for salespeople for a long time. Specifically because of that. Because every time that gate opens up and they see that shiny light or that white whale out there, they forget all about the fact that they've got to hit their normal numbers to pay their bills because they're chasing this whale off into the distance. And then, you know,
that whale swims away.
This whale swims away. You run out of gas and you don't have enough rations. You know, right? That's not a good position to be in. Right. So.
And it's happened to you. I know it's happened to me. It happens frequently. It's like
all the time.
It's like you might have a business owner that's like, "Yep, I'm going with you guys," and then you have this other guy that comes in and wants to undercut you by 20%. You're like, I can't compete with that.
Yeah. Yep. It's a rough world. There's a lot of ups and downs with it, but the consistency is key, and it just takes a certain type of person with a certain type of mindset to be able to do it.
Yeah,
right?
That's why I say go back to relationships. Is if you build a relationship, like I have a really good client that I work with. I'm sure you're well aware of them. That has given us a ton of business, and we're getting ready to do a couple builds for him, and we've had a delay on some products, and I thought he was pretty frustrated with us, and he's like, hey, I had another roofing company go out and look at this property that my broker set up, and he's like, the guy said it's claim worthy. He's like, I do not want to go with anybody else besides you guys, so will you go out and look at it and let me know what you think? And then so I do think at a certain point relationships will hopefully supersede that.
Relationships and just consistency. Right, you guys show up the next day. Right. What I would have done instead of sulked for 2 days is I would have went back and I would have worked like 15 hours and just like punished myself. For like the entire next month. Hit like 60 cars instead of 30. You know.
That would be nice.
Like no, this is mine. This is mine. This is mine.
And I mean that's
my personality. Is
that's like where it goes back to the 1%. It's like, hey, like how can you pick up the pieces and move forward? Because a lot of people they can't. You do that to somebody that hasn't experienced that before, or it's not mentally with it in the sales, then that will just completely demoralize them, crush them, and they're like, hey, this isn't for me. Let me just move on to something else.
Well, let's talk about, I'll get to this, I promise. But let's talk a little bit about the financial implications of a bad month or a bad week or a bad year. Right? So it's common understanding to anybody who works in the sales world that your salary is not what you're aiming for. It's your
Correct, yeah.
commission, right? You can make, with most businesses, there's a lot of businesses but put caps on things and whatever, but in a place like Pride Roofing Construction, there's no cap on commission, right? So you can make as much money as you want to make here. That being said, your guaranteed pay is not really that much. What happens in those months? How do you make those adjustments, and how do you prepare yourself for that?
Yeah, so I would say a lot of people that are thinking about getting into just sales in general, because a lot of companies, they're kind of going to that. They want to drive you to increase productivity, and the easiest way to do that is to offer somebody a commission on whatever they're selling. So if I came in here and you're like, hey, Dan, I'm going to pay you $10 for every roof that you sell, or I can pay you no guarantee and I'll pay you $20 for every roof that you sell. Guess what? I'm probably going to take the 20 because it's more than the 10. So a lot of companies are pushing that commission structure to just drive more sales to their business, which that's I think why commission was ever started. So I would tell people that are looking at getting into the business, one, I think you need to be somewhat financially stable before you take a sales position, because you really do ride the ebbs and flows. So it's like you said, you might have a really good month, you might have a really bad month, but you look at it at the end of the year, it's like, hey, did my year even out at some point or the other? So it's just, we know the winter months kind of slow down for us, so you have to really crank it up in the spring and summertime. So there's a reason why I work 75 hours a week in the summertime, because I don't want to work 75 hours a week in the wintertime. So it's like, strike while the iron's hot and get what you can in the summertime and take care of as many people as you can during busy season. And then that will kind of help push you through the slower off season, as we call it. But since I've started here, I've never really felt like an off season, I guess. So
yeah, that just might not be 75 hours.
I tell myself, I'm like, hey, it's like, I'm going to slow down. And I was just talking to my wife about this the other day. I was like, yeah, I'm ready to slow down. She's like, when do you ever slow down? I'm like, yeah, I guess that's a good point. I don't really ever slow down.
Yeah. Well, you're a Formula One car, man. They don't go slow. They go fast. Right?
Fast, full throttle.
But okay. So, well, I think you did hit the nail on the head of what I was trying to lead you into, which is, some advice for aspiring salespeople. Like if they're trying to get into the sales world, you should position yourself so that you have some form of financial support during your building phase.
Yeah.
That's the most important part, because if you don't, two things are going to happen. You're either going to hit a roadblock and you're going to quit and you're never going to come back, or you're going to sell hungry. Yeah. And selling hungry is a really bad position to be in, because you basically, you're desperate. People don't buy from you because they know you're desperate, right? Your aura is off. Your mannerisms are off. The way that you present yourself is completely off, and it throws people off, right? But it's not just that. It's that you make promises that certainly it's going to take every ounce of your energy to actually honor the promise, and more than likely you're going to fail with it, right? So you're going to create a reputation issue.
Seen that before.
Yeah, seen it too many times, right? But yeah, it's about you just have to make sure when you take that leap, you've got some form of support, whether it was built up from before or whether it's you got your family involved and you say, I want to try this career, right? That's you only need it. The building phase doesn't take forever.
It doesn't, and it's just, if you're looking for financial freedom, I mean, go out and find a sales position. It's like when the sky's the limit. And I used to always look at, when I was in the car business, whether I was selling cars or I was running the store, I would look at my paycheck on the 15th of the month. We got paid once a month. I would look at my paycheck on the 15th of the month and say, did you win or lose last month? And most of the time I won, but you take the occasional loss in there and you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt and move on. But
learn from it.
Look at your paycheck, and that will tell you how hard you're working.
Well, that's probably a good place to insert some data. They're the two most highest paid professions in the world are professional sports and sales.
Yep.
Right. So there's different sales jobs that maybe don't pay out the way that they that with what I'm talking about, but that's on the lower end of this scale, right? But I know car salesmen, I know roofing salesmen, I know machinery salesmen, I know oil salesmen. I know people who make 3 or 4 times what the president of the United States makes in a year, right? I know people who make more than what heart surgeons make in a year, right? That's a big driving force too. Maybe you should think about this, right?
Yep.
Sales, and then there's also more to add to that, right? Fortune 500 companies look more heavily at your resume if you have sales experience than they do if you have a master's degree.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy, right? But this is true dedicated experience versus hypothetical and theoretical experience from a book, right? These are tried and tested. These guys might have good grounding, maybe not when
Right.
tested, right?
Yeah.
You know, so it's a pretty big deal. So maybe we boil or break down some of these talking points. Let's talk about sales as a career. Many people find sales intimidating. What would you say to someone considering sales as their next career?
Well,
Besides the money, we just talked
yeah.
about that. Right?
I definitely, I mean, financial freedom, that should be a huge driving factor for a lot of people. But for me, it's more of, I'm definitely a relationship kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't ever picture myself going to punch a clock, sitting behind a desk, doing the same thing every single day. That's just, I told myself many years ago, that's not what I wanted to do. So I would say, like, hey, if you're good with people and you can firmly stand behind your character, I would say sales would be a great fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to be that guy that wants to come in here, promise the world, underdeliver, be a slime ball, not do things very ethically, I would say you have no position in sales wherever that's at, whatever capacity that is.
You might make sales as that character of person.
You
right?
will.
You definitely will, but you're going to have very short stints in lots of different places when you're found out for the person that you are. Right.
And I mean, the company that you're working for is like, hopefully they sniff that out pretty quick, because one bad apple
smell test.
No,
You
seriously.
stink, bud.
literally one bad apple, it will crush a small business. So
Sure
it's
will.
like, and it's funny, anytime that you interview for a sales position, whatever it is, if I was to ask you, hey, how much, and maybe not you, but just if I was interviewing you and you're coming from another sales job, and I was like, hey, how much did you sell last year at your previous job? That number is usually always inflated by like 40%, maybe even more. And I've seen it a lot with our guys that we bring in here. They're like, yeah, I sold X amount of dollars at this existing company. And then they come in, I was like, there's no freaking way. There is no way that you did that whatsoever.
So how big was the fish again?
Right. Yeah. We're talking minnows, literally minnows.
Yeah, fishermen and salespeople.
Yeah.
Kind of correlation there.
Yep.
But, well, I used to, when I would onboard, so when I worked in the gym industry before moving into construction, whenever I would hire new salespeople, I'd ask a couple of specific questions just to see, kind of gauge who they are as a person, and are they prepared well enough for what I'm asking them to do and the way I'm asking them to do it. One was integrity. Tell me your definition of integrity. Right. Actually, let's do it. Tell me your definition of integrity.
Yeah, I think it goes back to kind of what I just said. It's like, if you're telling somebody that you're going to do something, or you're going to do it no matter what. So it's like, if I promise you something, whether it's right, wrong, and indifferent, I'm going to deliver on that. And then if I have to answer somebody else for what I did, then I will. But if I promised you something, or I said I was going to do it, I'm going to do it. And then I'll have to deal with the ramifications on the backside, and like, hey, maybe I messed up, maybe I shouldn't have done that. So it's just always sticking true to your word.
Yep. I had this discussion with my son a couple days ago, and I was like, look, the most important thing that you and I are going to talk about now that you're old enough to start making these, he's starting to make certain decisions, like trying to lie about certain stuff and stuff like that.
My boys there too.
Right. And I was like, is your integrity?
Yep.
And, we broke that down a little bit, and I was like, you are only as good as your word.
Yep.
What you tell me, right? And if I find it out to be false, makes me think everything else that you've ever done had a bit of,
like, some kind of white lie.
It's like, I can't believe anything else that you've told me over time, and I got to start questioning you, and I'm going to think about you differently. It goes negative, right? It darkens, and that kind of stuff. So when I would answer that question, they'd ask, they'd answer, and I would answer, how I would define integrity is, are you the same person behind closed doors as you are in front of them?
Yep.
Right. It's like, are we having a conversation right now that I'm not afraid to have in the presence of the United States President or the Queen of England or whatever it is? And if you're not, right? You're not comfortable having that conversation in any audience. You should probably stop.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Right. But anyways, it's like you can define integrity a lot of ways, but it's being a person of honor, being a person who says one thing and also does it, being the same person behind closed doors. No two different versions of you, right? You're not wearing masks depending on where you are, or you can be a chameleon as a salesperson.
Yeah.
But that's simply just matching tone, matching mannerisms, matching body language, and being able to speak in a way that they're going to be able to receive it. But that doesn't mean the words you're saying are lies.
Yeah.
It just means that they are looking at you like we're same.
Yeah.
Same.
And right? I see a lot of people, it's like not necessarily that they're lying, but it's more like, oh, I just told them what they wanted to hear. And it's like, no. Like, you need to be honest and transparent with them, because then dealing with that 6 months down the road when it doesn't happen, that's where it's like, all right, guys, we got bigger problems on our hands now.
Yeah. I had heard something a ways back in a team meeting. It was probably 4 years ago now, that just absolutely just made the hair on my head and stand up. Like, I was just like so uncomfortable that somebody would say this in my presence that I onboarded. Right?
Yeah.
And essentially there's a gentleman he's a fantastic salesperson, incredible salesperson, very capable of lying to get the sale. Found out about that later down the road, right? But he was in charge of a couple other people, right? And I heard one of the other people that he had been training, what the heck did he say? He said something to the tune of, you ain't trying if you ain't cheating. And I
fucking lost
it. And I just, but it's because that's what drives an organization down.
Yep.
Right. It's like, one, you have that phrase, hire slow, fire fast, is specifically related to this. In the hiring slow phase, you are supposed to be able to do that sniff test, find out if they stink a little bit, right? You're supposed to, qualify them, as we call it all the time, because all of a sudden, as soon as you give them the logoed shirt and all their employee paperwork, they now are a representation of this organization. And if we haven't sniffed out the bad, right, when we find out that they were just lying, saying what they need to say to get the sale, because an interview is a sale.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. You're always you're selling yourself.
Right, all the time, right? When we find out about it, they should be short-lived. You should snuff it out instantaneously. This person, they were willing to lie to get the job, which means they're willing to lie to get all the jobs with their clients, which means they're putting you in a very uncomfortable, tough situation, position, right? You can do anything in the world. There's actually a client right now that I'm really in a weird pickle with, because we've done everything. There was not an error, so to speak, on their job, but something that should have been communicated better as to the result before the project happened. And then we've spent about $6,000 at this point trying to rectify this error. Still not happy, right? But that's kind of what happens when you put yourself in that position. The reputation thing, it's like you can try your damnedest to win it back. But there's some people you're never going to win it back with, and it's a stain on the organization, a stain on you as a person. And if your leadership is not smart enough, or it doesn't have the spine strong enough to go and say, nope, no longer are we going to accept this, right? That's just going to perpetuate over and over and over and over. It's going to cascade for a long, long time.
Yeah, 6 turns into 10, 10 to 12, 12 to 15, whatever it is. And
like Wayne's World.
Yeah,
And their friends told their friends.
No, and that's how it works, though. It's like you have a customer that has one bad experience. They always say that one customer will tell 6 more of their friends. And then those 6 will tell, and then it's like the trickle-down effect. And, I mean, you've done a really good job building the reputation in the community for just being the guys that are in an industry that are not full of, let's say, the most reputable guys, that we will always stand behind our work no matter what. And that's one thing that I truly appreciate is, I tell people all the time, is like, our integrity is at the foremost of this sale right here. So it's like, I'm not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize my integrity, which you should then in turn take like, hey, this guy's going to do what he has to do to make sure this job's done right.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that, but that should be the way. I mean, I wish we lived in a world where that was the way all business ran. Yeah. Right. But
they say restoration work is one of the worst businesses for just slime balls.
Well, it's a magnet.
Yeah.
Right, it's a magnet. I mean, easy sales, a lot of people would consider hail-related or storm-related sales easy sales
Yeah.
because there's so much instantaneous opportunity that it's almost like people are too inundated to soak up all of the market share. It makes it easy to wiggle in there and,
Yep.
and take up as much things as you can. And a lot of people don't do due diligence things that homeowners should do to find out if this really is somebody I should be handing money to.
Right.
Is this somebody I should even have on my property?
Yep.
Turns out there's a hell of a lot of them in the restoration world that you shouldn't even
It's like,
you
this
shouldn't
dude
even
should-
trust them
yeah.
standing on your grass,
Right.
let alone
Why don't you let them stand past the curb?
yeah, exactly. That's public
Yeah.
space. You
No,
stay right the
seriously.
F there,
Yeah.
you know. But that's unfortunately that it's like a magnet for that kind of stuff. Contractors in general, so you not only have the lure of like the easy sale thought process, but then you've got construction, which is like if you're not in construction, you don't really understand what somebody's doing when they're building something on your
Right.
property,
Yeah.
right? You don't know if
Absolutely.
it's an error. You don't know if it's the right method. You know, if it's a roofing, it's even worse. It adds
Yeah.
another layer because they're scared to get on the
They're,
roof.
yeah, they're not
90% of
climbing
the
up
time
there to check it
anyways,
out. Yep.
right? You can do whatever
Yep.
the hell you want to, and that's why the industry is so weird to be in, and that's why we tried to make this staple. It's like we are going to do this exactly the way we said we were going to do it. We're going to put quality there, and we're trying to change or flip that script. Now, will we ever flip that script? Probably not. There's always going to be slime balls,
Yeah.
but we're going to try our damnedest to
I
get
mean,
there.
that's unfortunate. That's any industry that we're in.
Yeah.
It's like whether it's car sales, whether it's construction, whether it's medical, whatever it is, there's always a bad apple that tries to ruin it for everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's why, I mean, Google reviews are so powerful, Facebook reviews. So it's like,
Yeah.
what's the first thing that you do when you go to buy something from somebody? You're like, okay, let me Google. Oh, they have a 4.1. Nope, not going to go with that guy.
Yeah, right.
Or, I mean,
Searching for
yeah,
restaurants. you're
even
like,
more.
4.8,
Yep.
and everybody's 4.2. I'm probably
Yeah,
going 4.8.
yeah, 4.8 all day long.
Right.
So
yeah.
it's just the powerful reviews
Mhm.
are, I mean, they mean so much to especially a small
Mhm.
business.
Well, that's probably a good, I guess, pivot point. So
Thank you all for tuning into this episode of Into the Lion's Den. We appreciate your time, and we hope that you've gathered enough ammunition to go out, fight the good fight, and become a better person every single day. Please like and subscribe, engage in our content, ask us some questions. We'd love to tailor fit the next episode to you.